If someone had told me the smell of her coffee could soften the word enemy, I'd have laughed into the pillow. I came to with my skull pounding, tequila sour on my tongue, and the gut-deep certainty that something was very, very off. Pale light leaked through hotel curtains I didn't recognize, and the dry air made the spinning worse. I lifted a hand to knead my temples, groaning, then stopped cold. A jacket was draped over me. Not mine. My pulse kicked hard. I pushed myself upright, sifting through jagged flashes of last night. And that's when I saw her across the room, turned away, still in a dress that had seen better hours. Kestrel Voss. Her spine was straight as a blade, dark hair in wild disorder. The back of her dress slightly unzipped like she'd yanked it on in a hurry. I blinked. No, 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 Kestrel. I crooked. She turned around slowly. Her eyeliner was smudged. There was glitter on her cheek, and her expression was a perfect reflection of mine. Confused, horrified, and already dreading the answer to a question we hadn't even asked yet. Sloane, she said flatly, tell me this is a nightmare. I think. I looked around the hotel suite. Empty champagne flutes. A crumpled veil on the floor. Something that looked like a fake bouquet. A glittery sign slanted against the wall. Just married. Oh my God, I whispered. I glanced down at my hand. There was a cheap gold ring sitting on my left finger. I didn't want to look at her hand, but I did. Same ring, same finger. Tell me we didn't, I said. Tell me we didn't actually. Stood up so fast she nearly tripped. She scanned the room, found a piece of paper on the coffee table, and held it up like it had personally offended her. Marriage certificate, she muttered. Signed, stamped, dated yesterday. My stomach dropped through the floor. This has to be a joke, a prank. Hey, if you're enjoying this story, go ahead and drop a like to help us grow even more. And let me know in the comments, on a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story so far? Your feedback makes all the difference. Someone's messing with us. Look at this, she said, shoving her phone at me. On the screen was a blurry photo of the two of us standing at an altar. I had my arms around her shoulders. She was laughing, and there were actual tears in my eyes. I looked like I was saying vows or something dangerously close to it. This can't be real, I whispered. We hate each other. Exactly. Kestrel snapped, pacing now. You've spent the last 4 years making sure I knew that. So why in the world would we ever do this? Maybe someone dared us. Maybe we lost our minds, she muttered. This is why I don't drink tequila. I sank onto the edge of the couch trying to breathe. My heart was racing. Everything felt wrong. We need to undo this, I said immediately. Obviously, she said, we need to go to the courthouse, or get a lawyer, or something. Do you think anyone knows? I don't know, she said, but knowing you, you probably posted it on your story. Knowing me, I shot back. You're the one who documents everything. She rolled her eyes. This is not the time to start another fight. I'm not starting a fight, I said. I'm dealing with the fact that I woke up legally married to my mortal enemy. She opened the door and froze. Oh no. I stood beside her, squinting at the hallway. A group of girls, clearly a bachelorette party, were walking by. One of them recognized us immediately. Oh my God. The wives. She squealed. You two were iconic last night. Congrats. Iconic. I repeated, mortified. You were crying during the Vice. Another girl shouted as they walked away. It was so beautiful. I slammed the door shut. We're doomed. Kestrel collapsed back into a chair, covering her face. We need to fix this before anyone else finds out. I nodded. But deep down, I couldn't stop thinking about that photo. The way I'd been looking at her, the way she'd been looking at me. There was something in those expressions, something too real. And that scared me more than the marriage certificate ever could. We didn't speak on the way to the courthouse. Not in the elevator. Not in the lobby of the hotel. Not in the taxi we both scrambled into while trying to avoid eye contact. The air between us was thick with awkward silence, the kind that settles when two people are forced to exist in the same space, but want to be anywhere else. Kestrel sat on the far end of the seat, arms crossed, sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. I stared out the window, trying to focus on anything other than the cheap ring still sitting on my finger. I could have taken it off. I didn't. At the courthouse, things got worse. The line was long. The clerk was uninterested, and once we finally made it to the front and explained what we needed, a swift annulment of a deeply regrettable mistake, the woman behind the counter gave us a long, tired look, as if she'd seen 1,000 versions of us walk in before. "You can't file for annulment just because you're having morning after regrets," she said, flipping through a stack of forms. "You need to meet one of the specific legal grounds: fraud, coercion, intoxication to the point of mental incapacity." "That one," I said quickly. "That last one." Kestrel leaned forward. "We were absolutely incapable of making decisions. We don't even remember the ceremony. I didn't even know I was married until I woke up and saw her." The woman raised an eyebrow. "And yet you both signed the paperwork, participated in a ceremony, and took photos that make you look quite happy." "That's the tequila talking," I muttered. "Isn't there an emergency clause?" Kestrel asked, clearly losing patience. "There has to be a way to fix this fast. You'll need to file the annulment paperwork," the clerk replied calmly. "It'll take a few weeks to process. Until then, you are legally married." "A few weeks," we both shouted at the same time. She handed us a stack of papers and called for the next person in line. Outside, the wind had picked up, tugging at Kestrel's already messy hair as she stared at the documents in her hand, like they were death certificates. "We have to go back to real life married," she said flatly. "This is a nightmare." I ran a hand through my hair, barely able to breathe. "No one can know. Not my friends, not my boss, not my parents. If my mom finds out I got drunk married to someone I can't stand, she'll organize an intervention and probably a priest. My agent will kill me," Kestrel muttered. "She's already planning my brand as a confident, independent woman. A spontaneous marriage is basically social career suicide." "Wait," I said slowly. "You're not going to post about it, right? No cryptic Instagram captions." She scoffed. "I'm not the one who documents every cup of coffee I drink. You post more than a food blogger. Well, you tag me in everything out of spite." I snapped. "So, maybe stop doing that. Maybe stop giving me things to mock." She shot back. A beat of silence. Then we both sighed. "Look," I said, softening my tone. "We need a plan, a real one. Until this is annulled, we lie low. Keep this between us. Act normal." "Fine," she said. "But if this leaks, I'm blaming you." "You always do, because it's usually your fault." "Okay," I snapped. "You know what? Let's just stop talking altogether." "Gladly." The silence lasted until we got back to the hotel. We were sharing a suite, apparently probably part of some romantic honeymoon package we drunkenly splurged on, and the front desk receptionist was far too chipper when she handed us to complimentary just married spa passes. Kestrel looked like she wanted to incinerate the cards on the spot. "You take the bed," I said the moment we stepped inside. "I'll sleep on the couch. I'm not staying here with you. We already paid." I said, "Might as well wait out the checkout time. Or do you want to wander the neon harbor strip with a ring on your finger and glitter still in your hair?" She groaned and sank onto the bed, burying her face in her hands. "This is humiliating." Agreed. We sat in silence again. The TV was on in the background, playing some wedding reality show that only made everything worse. My head was still spinning, not from the hangover, but from the fact that this wasn't just a dumb one-night situation. It was legal on paper. I was married to a girl I couldn't stand. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something unsettling. We weren't acting like strangers. Not exactly. Our bickering, our eye rolls, the fire behind every word. It was familiar, too familiar, like we'd been having this fight for years, like we knew exactly how to push each other's buttons. And for a moment, I had to wonder, was that hate or something else that we never admitted? I shook the thought away. It didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was getting this annulment and never speaking to her again. "You're flying home tomorrow?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. "You same." Good, good. But neither of us moved to pack. Neither of us turned off the TV. We just sat there not speaking, waiting for something to make this all go away. It didn't. The moment I stepped back into my apartment, everything felt off. Maybe it was because I'd spent the last 48 hours trapped in a surreal neon harbor fever dream, with the one person I couldn't stand. Or maybe it was because I'd come home married. I dropped my bag by the door, kicked off my shoes, and stood in the center of my living room, staring at the silence. No screaming bachelorette parties, no blinking neon signs, no sarcastic remarks from Kestrel, just the buzz of the fridge and the faint hum of city traffic outside. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt like I was holding my breath. I opened my phone and scrolled through the photos. I told myself I would delete the glittery altar, the blurry video of us dancing, a selfie where she was laughing with her whole face and I was looking at her like she mattered. I turned off my phone. This was ridiculous. I had a life to get back to, a job, friends, deadlines. I wasn't going to spiral over a mistake I couldn't even remember, especially not a mistake named Kestrel Voss. Across the city, I knew she was probably doing the exact same thing, pretending it never happened, pretending I didn't happen. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes, moments I couldn't fully place. Her hand pulling me up onto a stage, my arm around her waist. The two of us laughing like we didn't have a care in the world, like we weren't sworn enemies. I told myself it didn't matter. One more week, maybe two, and the annulment would be done. Then we could both move on and never speak of it again. That plan lasted exactly 2 days. On the third morning, I got a call from my boss at the magazine. "Sloan, good news," she said brightly. "You know the editorial series we've been planning on unconventional relationships?" "Yeah," I said cautiously. "We want you to lead it. First-person features, real stories, emotional resonance. You're best writer when it comes to voice and vulnerability." "Okay, we already lined up a pitch for the first story," she continued. "A surprise neon harbor marriage between two women. Accidental, chaotic. Apparently, they're total opposites. It's hilarious." My stomach dropped. "Where did you even find a story like that?" "It went viral," she said like it was obvious. "One of the bride's friends posted a TikTok about it. Don't worry, she didn't use names. But the internet's obsessed. We tracked them down. One of them said she'd be open to telling her side of the story exclusively. You want me to interview her? Not just interview. We want both perspectives. A full profile. Sit down with the couple. Spend time with them. Write something that shows the heart behind the chaos." I swallowed. "Do you have a name?" "Kestrel Voss," she said. "Ever heard of her?" I almost dropped the phone. "You okay?" "Yeah," I croaked, just processing. "We've already reached out to her. She's willing to talk. I need you to call her today." After I hung up, I sat in silence, staring at the wall. Of course she'd say yes. Kestrel never backed away from attention. She probably thought this was hilarious. I opened my phone again, scrolled past the photos I hadn't deleted, and found her number. I didn't want to call, but I couldn't avoid it. This was my job. This was my chance to write something important, something real. I pressed dial. It rang twice. "Sloan," she answered, her voice sharper than I remembered. "Wow, already bored without me." "Don't flatter yourself," I said. "I got assigned to write a feature about us. About the wedding. A pause. Seriously, my editor saw the viral post. She wants both perspectives. Emotional insight. Time spent together. So, you want to interview me? Yes. Why would I help you write an article that makes me look like an idiot? Because it's anonymous. No names, no photos, just the story. Honest, messy, real. Another pause. Then she sighed. Fine. But if you twist anything I say, I'll tell the world you cried during our fake vows. They were real vows, I muttered. Don't remind me. When do we start? She asked. Tomorrow. Great. I'll see you then, wife. She hung up before I could reply. The next morning, she was waiting for me at a downtown cafe, dressed like the cover of an indie magazine. Blazer, boots, iced coffee in hand. She looked like someone who belonged in control, not like someone who accidentally got married in Neon Harbor. You're late, she said without looking up. You're early, I replied, sitting down across from her. Surprised you could wake up before noon. Surprised you didn't bring a notepad. It's in my bag. You're rusty. You're still obnoxious. Her lips twitched. And yet here we are. Tell me your version, I said, sliding out my recorder. Start from when we ran into each other in Neon Harbor. You mean when you dumped a drink on me? That was an accident. You called me a menace. You called me emotionally constipated. Because you are. I stared at her. Do you want to do this or not? She leaned back, took a slow sip of coffee, and smiled like the whole thing amused her. Fine, she said. Let's tell the world about the catastrophe that is us. Thought so. You're already recording, aren't you? Kestrel arched a brow, stirring her coffee with that measured precision that made everything she did feel deliberate. Obviously, I said, tapping the small black recorder on the table. I told you I want this to feel authentic. Authentic, she echoed, like the word itself was a punchline. That's rich coming from you. What's that supposed to mean? She tilted her head, wearing that smug little smile she saved for moments when she was sure she knew more than everyone else in the room. It means you like to pretend you're an objective journalist. But I know you. You write with an angle. And what angle would that be? I asked, my voice tight, making me the villain. Obviously. I narrowed my eyes. You really think I'm here to make you look bad? I think, she said, setting down her cup. You're not exactly unbiased where I'm concerned. You're right, I said. I'm not, because every time I think about that night, all I can see is you hauling me on stage for karaoke and belting I want to dance with somebody. Like you were born for it. She blinked, thrown off balance. You remember that. Hard to forget when you elbowed me in the ribs during the chorus. She let out a small laugh before catching herself and shaking her head. Whatever. Your ribs deserved it. Still bruised. Thank you very much. You're dramatic and you're reckless. Which is how we ended up married, she said, voice dropping just slightly. Silence settled between us again, heavy and lingering. I looked at her, really looked, and for a second, I didn't see the girl who made my college years a battlefield. I saw someone tired, someone caught in the same emotional storm I was trying to pretend didn't exist. Let's start from the beginning, I said, for the article. Fine, she said, sitting up straighter. We ran into each other at that rooftop bar, the one with the overpriced drinks and the disco ball. You were with your friends. I was alone, just arrived. You looked miserable, she added, like you didn't want to be there. I didn't, I admitted. Neon Harbor wasn't my idea. Mine neither. My friend was getting married and forced me into the maid of honor role. So, we were both already grumpy, I said, scribbling in my notebook. Perfect storm. And then you spilled your drink on my dress. That was an accident. You were waving your arms like you were conducting an orchestra. You were standing too close. You could have just apologized, she said, crossing her arms. But instead, you called me a walking PR stunt. Because you said I was emotionally constipated in front of a group of strangers. Which wasn't wrong. You're infuriating. You're fragile. You're impossible. She stopped. We were staring at each other, both breathing a little too hard for such a simple argument. Her eyes held mine for a second too long. Then she looked away. Anyway, she said quietly, somehow, we ended up at the bar together, drinking more than we should have, talking more than we ever had. I glanced at her. Do you remember what we talked about? She hesitated, bits and pieces. Like you told me you used to think I was intimidating. She said back in college I said that. You said I walked into rooms like I owned them, like I never questioned myself. You said it annoyed you. I laughed once quietly. That sounds like me. Then I said you always looked like you were trying not to be noticed, but that it never worked because you stood out without trying, and that annoyed me. I blinked. You said that I was drunk, she said quickly. You can't quote me on that. It's on record. Delete it. Not a chance. She rolled her eyes, but there was a softness around her mouth now, something almost vulnerable. I don't remember deciding to get married, she said after a moment. Me neither. 1 second we were dancing in that ridiculous club and the next vows glitter applause. I remember holding your hand, she said so quietly I almost didn't catch it. I remember thinking it felt right and that scared me. My chest tightened. I told myself it was just the alcohol. Maybe it was, she said, but maybe it wasn't. You still want the annulment? I asked. She looked at me. Don't you? I opened my mouth to say yes, to say of course, but the words didn't come. She stood up before I could decide what I wanted to say. Let me know when you want the next interview, she said, brushing imaginary lint from her blazer. I have a meeting about what? I asked. A book deal, she said casually. Apparently, chaotic queer weddings are very in right now. Of course they are. Bye, wife, she said with a wink before walking out. I watched her go, wondering for the 100th time how a girl I couldn't stand had become the only thing I couldn't stop thinking about. 3 days passed, 3 long, restless, overanalyzed days since my last meeting with Kestrel, and I hadn't written a single word of the article. I kept staring at the blinking cursor on my laptop screen, hoping that the words would somehow appear on their own. But every time I tried to start, I saw her face. Her smirk, the way her voice had dropped when she said she remembered holding my hand. The things we'd said to each other, half-truths wrapped in sarcasm, insults that were starting to sound more like flirtation. I told myself this was just the emotional hangover of being forced into proximity with someone I couldn't stand. But if that were true, why was I scrolling through our text thread at midnight, rereading a conversation where she'd only sent me a picture of a croissant with a caption, "This is more loyal than you," and I'd replied with, "I'd marry that croissant instead of you if I could." And worse. Why did I smile when I read it again? I finally gave up trying to write and decided to walk. Fresh air, I told myself, a distraction, something to reset my brain. But halfway through the Northbridge Park, I spotted her sitting on a bench like it was staged. Head tilted back, sunglasses on, earbuds in. Kestrel, of course. I almost kept walking, almost turned around, but some part of me, the part that had been replaying our night in Neon Harbor like it was my favorite movie, steered me right toward her. She noticed me as I approached and pulled out one earbud. If you say this is a coincidence, I'll assume you've been stalking me. This is public space, I said, sitting beside her. You don't own benches. I own the air around them, she said flatly. What do you want? Inspiration, I muttered. You're not exactly helping. You're the writer. Maybe the problem is you. Or maybe it's you, I said. This was supposed to be a fun disaster story, easy, entertaining. But now it's just confusing. She looked at me, and for once she didn't look like she was about to argue. Yeah, she said quietly. It is. I studied her face. For someone who was usually so guarded, she looked tired. Not in a physical way, but in the kind of way that made you feel like life had been pulling at you from every direction. You okay? I asked. She shrugged. I have a book deadline, an agent breathing down my neck, and oh yeah, I accidentally married a woman who used to call me a brand in human form. I called you that once. You said it loudly in a lecture hall. You were doing a product placement during a debate. I reminded her you were drinking an energy drink while arguing about capitalism. It was performance art, she said with a slight smile. You were jealous of your energy drink, of my ability to make people listen. I didn't answer, mostly because she wasn't wrong. Kestrel had always been the kind of person people noticed, not just because she was beautiful, though she was painfully so, but because she made everything look effortless. I'd spent years convincing myself that she irritated me because she was arrogant, but the truth was simpler. I didn't like how she made me feel, like I wasn't invisible, like she saw through every wall I built and called me out anyway. Why haven't you filed the annulment yet? I asked. She blinked, caught off guard. Why haven't you? I asked you first. I've been busy, she said. I figured you'd handle it. I thought we were handling it together. We were, she said, until it started to feel like maybe you didn't want to. I opened my mouth to deny it, but I didn't because somewhere in the back of my mind, I'd been dragging my feet, too. Not because I wanted to stay married, but because I didn't want this, whatever this was, to be over. If we get the annulment, she said softly, do we go back to ignoring each other? Isn't that what we want? Is it? I didn't know how to answer her. I stared at my hands, at the faint imprint of the ring I hadn't worn since the courthouse. I don't know what this is, I said, but I know it's not nothing. Same? She leaned back on the bench, arms crossed. The weirdest part is I've known you for years and I feel like I'm just now seeing who you actually are. Same, I said quietly. A moment passed, the kind that sits between people when neither of them knows what to say next. I looked at her again. Do you want to come with me to do what? Research, I said, standing up for the article. What kind of research? Experiential. I said, we can't write about being fake married if we don't explore what that means. You want to fake date your fake wife? Exactly. That's not a real plan. You're scared, I teased. She stood up and brushed off her jeans. Scared of you, please. So prove it. Fine, she said. I'm free Friday. Friday. It is. Don't make me regret this, she said. Too late, I muttered, but I was smiling. As I walked away, I heard her call after me. Hey, Sloane. I turned. Yeah. Wear something that doesn't scream editorial intern with anxiety. Wear something that doesn't scream chaotic bisexual and crisis. No promises, she said, and we both smiled at the same time. Not enemies, not yet lovers, just something in between. I didn't know why I was nervous. It wasn't real. It was research. That's what I kept telling myself as I stood in front of my closet, staring at clothes I suddenly hated, trying to find something that said fake date with the girl I accidentally married. Without screaming, I thought about this too much. After 20 minutes of internal spiraling, I settled on a dress I hadn't worn in over a year. Simple, soft navy blue. Not too casual, not too formal. Clean lines, safe neckline, safe everything. Kestrel, of course, didn't do safe. When I arrived at the cafe, we'd agreed on a cozy rooftop spot with string lights and jazz playing softly from old speakers. She was already seated at the corner table, wearing a burnt orange blazer over a black turtleneck, and somehow managing to look like the main character in a movie about a woman who breaks hearts for a living. You're late, she said, sipping a drink that matched the vibe of the venue. You're early, I replied, taking the seat across from her. Or maybe you were just impatient to see me. I'm here for the article, she said. I don't get emotionally invested in fake relationships, right? Forgot who I was talking to. Ice Queen of the West Coast. She smirked. You wore the navy dress. I blinked. You remember this dress? You wore it to your thesis presentation. In senior year, you were shaking so hard your hands almost dropped the clicker. I stared at her. I can't believe you remember that. I remember a lot of things, she said, and for a heartbeat. The sarcasm dropped, replaced by something softer, warmer. The waitress came, took our order, and for a while we stuck to safe groundwork, writing, travel, the erratic weather. But underneath, something else moved, a current tugging us closer. So, Kestrel said, twirling her fork, if this is a real fake date, do we ask each other personal questions? Is that part of the bit? It is if we want to sell the story. Authenticity, remember. Fine, I said, setting down my glass. What's the most surprising thing about being accidentally married to me? She didn't miss a beat. That I don't hate it as much as I should. My heart stumbled. Your turn, she added, lifting an eyebrow. What shocks you most? That I'm starting to think we never truly hated each other, I said, startling myself as much as her. Maybe we just never gave it a real chance. Her expression flickered. She glanced down at her plate, then back up. Do you think we'd have liked each other if we hadn't met in college? I think we would have scared each other, I said. But maybe we'd have been brave enough to admit it wasn't hate. She smiled slowly, like it almost hurt. You're not what I expected, Sloane. Neither are you. After dinner, neither of us wanted to go home. We walked no plan, just drifting through the city while conversation stretched to fill the space between us. She told me about her first heartbreak, the girl who left without a word. How Kestrel pretended it didn't cut. I told her about my mother's expectations, how I was the quiet daughter who did what was asked, and nothing beyond. You ever get tired of following the rules? She asked. Every day, I said, but I'm afraid of what happens if I stop. Maybe you're just waiting for someone to give you permission. I stopped. So did she. We were under a streetlight now, its soft halo making her hair look deliberate. You think I need someone to tell me who I can be? No, she said. I think you already know. I just think you're afraid to say it out loud. I opened my mouth, nothing came. She stepped closer. Not dramatic, just enough to erase the space. This was supposed to be fake, she said, voice gentler now. But it doesn't feel fake anymore. I know, I whispered. Do we stop? Do you want to? I looked at her, the same girl who used to set my blood boiling and now sent my heart racing, faster than I wanted to admit. No, I said. I don't want to stop. Then don't, she said. For a moment, neither of us moved. The night wrapped around us like it was holding its breath. No kiss, no dramatic music, just two girls standing in the space between what was and what could be. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want the annulment. I wanted to know what came next. Something had changed. Not just in the way Kestrel looked at me now, or the way her texts had started coming more frequently and with fewer barbs. Not just in the fact that I was spending more time checking my phone, rereading messages, remembering the sound of her laugh from that rooftop cafe. No. What changed was something inside me, something I didn't have a name for yet. I told myself it was temporary, that once the article was finished, once the annulment was processed, once this bizarre chapter was behind us, things would go back to normal. But every time I saw her name light up on my screen, normal felt like a concept I didn't even want anymore. On Monday, I had lunch with my editor, and she practically vibrated with excitement as she asked about the article's progress. You've got something here, Sloane, she said between bites of salad. People are obsessed with stories like this. Messy, romantic, chaotic, but beautiful. You're capturing lightning. I nodded, smiling on the outside while my stomach flipped inside. I hadn't turned in a single draft yet, just a tangle of notes, recordings, and pages of thoughts I hadn't been brave enough to turn into sentences. So, what's the next step? She asked. I was thinking a follow-up date, I said carefully. More structured. I want to dig into how do people with a messy history handle an unexpected connection. Brilliant, she said. More conflict, more vulnerability. Readers will devour it. I left the meeting feeling like I carried a secret no one else could see. Because the truth was, it wasn't just a story anymore. It wasn't even a fake relationship. Somewhere, between the barbed banter, the laughter, and those long walks under streetlights, I'd started to fall for her, and that terrified me. Kestrel texted that night to ask if I wanted to keep pretending to be her wife. At a downtown gallery opening, minimal talking required, she wrote, "Just look moody and mysterious. I'll handle the rest." I didn't hesitate. The gallery was crammed with people Kestrel somehow knew. She flowed through the rooms like she owned them, trading quick jokes with the curator, kissing cheeks, rolling her eyes at installations, trying too hard. I tried to keep a low profile. It didn't last. "Is this your wife?" someone called, tugging Kestrel toward me. The neon harbor legend. Kess's smile didn't slip. The one and only. Her arm slid around my waist, easy, proprietary, like it belonged there. I didn't move away. "You're real?" the woman asked me. "We figured Kestrel invented you to dodge questions about her love life." "I get that a lot," I said, somehow keeping my voice even. "But unfortunately for both of us, I'm very real." "Unfortunate?" Kestrel asked, raising an eyebrow. "Depends on the day," I muttered. She laughed and leaned in, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. "You're lucky you're charming when you're grumpy. You're lucky I haven't pushed you into a modern art piece yet." "Later," she said, and I rolled my eyes to keep from smiling. We wandered through the gallery after that, side by side, occasionally commenting on the art, occasionally stealing glances when we thought the other wasn't looking. At one point, we stopped in front of a massive abstract painting. Just swirls of deep reds and dark purples, and Kestrel said, "This is what it feels like inside my brain when I'm around you." I turned to her, chaic and dramatic. "Unexplainable," she said. "A little messy, but it pulls you in anyway." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything, but I felt it deep in my chest. The pull. After the event, she walked me to the train station, even though her car was parked nearby. We stood in that awkward bubble of space where two people are waiting for a goodbye. "That feels too complicated to make casual." "You looked good tonight," she said, almost shy. "Thanks," I replied. "You clean up okay yourself." She smiled. "Do you think we're crazy?" "Completely." "Do you think this is real?" I looked at her, then really looked at the person I once couldn't stand. The person who knew how to challenge me and calm me at the same time. "I think," I said slowly, "this might be the most real thing I've felt in a long time." She didn't respond right away, but when the train finally pulled in and I turned to leave, she caught my hand just for a second, just long enough to make it impossible to pretend anymore. "Don't go quiet on me," she said. "I won't," I promised. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at my ceiling again, but this time the thoughts weren't confused or anxious. They were clear. Kestrel Voss wasn't the enemy. She never had been. Maybe she'd been something else this whole time. Something waiting for the right moment to make itself known. And maybe that moment was now. I should have known it wouldn't stay in our little bubble forever. That the strange safety I'd found with Kestrel. Those nights filled with quiet conversations. Those moments of connection that felt too intimate to name, would eventually be interrupted by real life knocking at the door. But I didn't expect it to happen so abruptly. And I definitely didn't expect it to happen at my parents' house. I hadn't planned on telling them anything. I wasn't even supposed to see them that weekend. But my mom called insisting I come for dinner. Her voice had that tone, the one that didn't sound optional, and I thought fine. I'd smile through it, nod at their questions about work, and be back in the city by nightfall. Instead, I walked through the door and found my mother already holding a printed copy of the article draft I hadn't even submitted yet. "You didn't tell us you got married," she said, smiling in that painfully curious way. My stomach dropped. How did you what? How do you have that? Your aunt forwarded it to me, she said brightly. Apparently, a friend of hers saw it on an early draft site. Someone must have leaked it. Isn't it wonderful? So spontaneous. Mom, I said carefully, it was a mistake. It's being annulled. A mistake. She blinked. You wrote beautifully about her. And look at this. She flipped a page, reading aloud. She made me feel like I was being seen for the first time in a long time. Sloane, that doesn't sound like a mistake. My dad, who had been quiet so far, finally cleared his throat. You're not in trouble, he said gently. We're just surprised and maybe a little curious about the girl who changed your life in one night. I wanted to explain. I wanted to say it had been an accident, a whirlwind, a drunken blur. But the truth was, they weren't wrong. She had changed something. And the fact that they could see that even from an unfinished draft made it harder to pretend otherwise. We'd like to meet her, my mom added, if it's not too much to ask. I stared at her. You want to meet Kestrel, if that's her name? Yes, it's a lovely name. Strong. I left dinner an hour later, head spinning, pulse racing, half horrified and half something else. I didn't know whether to scream or laugh. So naturally, I called her. Your family wants to meet me, she said, amused. Correction, I muttered. My mother wants to meet you, and it's entirely your fault for being accidentally charming through my writing. Or maybe it's your fault for writing me like a romantic hero, she teased. That's not what I did. You literally said, I see you like no one else. I was being metaphorical. You were being honest. Shut up. When's dinner? Saturday. I'll be there. Seriously, why not? She said. What's the worst that could happen? The worst, as it turned out, was everything. Saturday came too fast. Kestrel showed up at my childhood home wearing a soft cream sweater and black jeans, looking infuriatingly composed. My mother loved her instantly. My father smiled politely, asking her about her writing, her plans, her family. Kestrel navigated it all with effortless charm. I stood by, tense and awkward, watching this surreal scene unfold. It felt like I was watching someone else's life. She's lovely, my mom whispered in the kitchen while we served dessert. You have a sparkle around her. I'm getting an annulment, I whispered back. Don't fall in love with her. Too late, she said with a wink. She's staying for pie. We sat at the table afterward, the conversation flowing easier than I expected. Kestrel told stories. My dad even laughed at one, and every once in a while, she'd glance at me like she was trying to say something wordlessly, something I wasn't ready to hear. Later, after my parents went upstairs and the night grew quiet, we stood by the front door, neither of us moving. That went better than expected, she said softly. You destroyed them, I muttered. They're obsessed. You're welcome. This doesn't mean anything, I said, even though I didn't sound convincing. It doesn't, she asked. Meeting your parents, eating pie at your childhood table, watching your face when your mom said she sees the way you look at me. It was just dinner, I said. You know what scares me the most? She asked, stepping closer. That we're both pretending this is still a joke, still a game. When we both know it stopped being one a long time ago. We can't. Why not? I stared at her. Because I don't know how to want someone like this because I've spent my whole life keeping things safe controlled. And you ruined that. Maybe that's not a bad thing, she whispered. Maybe you need someone who makes you lose control. Maybe you need someone who doesn't. Maybe we need each other, she said. And I didn't have an answer. I just stood there caught in that impossible moment where everything felt like it was about to change. Come home with me, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. She blinked. Are you sure? I don't know what I'm doing, I said, but I know I don't want to pretend anymore. She nodded. We left together. Quiet. No grand gestures. Just a silent agreement that whatever this was, It wasn't fake anymore. I thought going home with her would answer something. I thought it would make all of this less confusing. That once we were in the same room, without the performances and the sarcasm, and the thin veil of denial between us, the truth would be obvious. But the truth didn't hit me all at once. It crept in slowly in the way Kestrel kicked off her shoes at the door of my apartment, like she'd done it 100 times. In the way she curled up on the edge of my couch, knees tucked beneath her, watching me with a softness I didn't know what to do with. In the way I made tea because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. We didn't talk much that night. Not about us anyway. We talked about favorite books, childhood dreams, ridiculous high school memories. It wasn't loud or dramatic or life-altering. It was simple, natural, and that's what scared me the most because nothing about Kestrel Voss had ever been simple. But now here she was barefoot in my living room sipping tea, telling me about how she once wanted to be a vet, but couldn't handle the idea of hurting animals, even if it was to help them. So, I became a writer instead, she said, half laughing. Less blood, more emotional damage. You're good at emotional damage, I teased. It's one of my core skills, she replied. That and ordering wine like I know what I'm talking about. I smiled, then leaned back in my chair and stared at her for a moment too long. She noticed. What? She asked, brushing her hair out of her face. Nothing, I said. It's just weird. What is this? You hear like this? Her eyes flicked to mine. Does it feel wrong? No, I said. That's the problem. We didn't say much after that. She stayed over on the couch at first, insisting she didn't want to make it weird. But I couldn't sleep knowing she was in the next room. At 2:30 a.m., I padded out quietly and found her awake, screen dimmed, scrolling. Hey, she whispered. Couldn't sleep? I shook my head. She sat up, made space, and I took it. We didn't talk. She let her head rest lightly on my shoulder, and I let it. I let her stay. I let myself want her. For the first time, I didn't tell myself it was a mistake. Morning felt different, quieter, delicate, still charged. She made coffee like she'd always lived there. I opened my laptop like I wasn't fighting a hurricane of thoughts. Eventually she left, said she had edits, no questions about when we'd meet again. Just a smile, a soft "see you soon, wife," and the door closing gently behind her. I stared at it for a long time. That afternoon, I went to my editor's office to finally talk. She lit up when I said I'd made progress and brighter still when I hinted. The relationship had shifted. Exactly what we want, she said. More heart, more mess, more truth. Make them fall for each other. What if they already did? I asked, almost under my breath. Her eyes narrowed. You mean really? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She leaned back. Sloane, this started as a story. If it's turning personal, that's okay, but you need to be honest with yourself and with her. I know. And with the readers, she added. They'll feel it if you hold back. That night I tried to write. I opened the draft, stared at the blank page, typed a first line, erased it, tried again, deleted again. On repeat. I couldn't peel the story from the person, because she wasn't a character anymore. She wasn't an idea. She was Kestrel. She was the girl who had once been my rival and now made me feel like I was becoming someone I actually liked. A few days later, we met for lunch. It felt different now, less like pretending, more like something we didn't have words for. I told her about my editor, about the story, about the pressure, and to my surprise, she didn't get mad. She just listened. So what now? She asked. You write the ending. I don't know what the ending is, I admitted. Neither do I, she said. But I know I don't want it to be over. Me neither. Then don't write the ending yet, she said. Just write what's real. I looked at her across the table, heart thudding. What's real is I don't want to undo this. Me neither, she said. I thought I did. But now she shook her head. You make me feel like I can be softer, and I didn't know I wanted that. I reached across the table, brushing her fingers. You're allowed to want that. And you? She asked. What do you want? You? I said, voice shaking. I want you. We didn't kiss. Not then, not in that moment. But we didn't need to. Something bigger had already been exchanged. Something that didn't need dramatic declarations or viral videos to be real. Later that night, she sent me a message that just said, if we don't file the annulment, what happens next? And for once, I wasn't afraid of the answer. The message stayed on my screen all night. If we don't file the annulment, what happens next? I read it at least 50 times. I started typing answers a dozen times, then deleted them all. Every version felt wrong. Too much or not enough. Too honest or too afraid. What happens next? I didn't know. I was falling in love with someone I wasn't supposed to. With someone I'd spent years resenting, avoiding, arguing with. And now she was the only person who made me feel like I could actually breathe. I fell asleep with the phone still in my hand and woke up feeling like the world had tilted while I slept. I sent her a voice note the next morning. My voice trembled the whole time. I don't know what happens next, I said. But I want to find out with you. No reply for 10 minutes. Then 15. Then an hour. I told myself she was just busy, that she'd answer later. But by midday, my nerves were unraveling. I sent a text. Still nothing. I tried to work on the article, but my thoughts were scattered. Every word on the page felt like a lie if I couldn't figure out what she was thinking. By nightfall, I couldn't take it anymore. I called her straight to voicemail. The next morning, still nothing. No texts, no messages, not even a meme or a sarcastic emoji. Kestrel had disappeared. I didn't want to panic, but I was quietly at first, then fully all-consuming. I tried telling myself that we hadn't made any promises, that none of this was real. But it was real. At least it had become real to me. And her silence felt like someone cutting the cord I didn't even know was holding me together. On the third day, I found out the truth. Not from her, but from the internet. A trending tweet, a blurry photo of Kestrel at a publisher's event. Standing beside her was a woman, gorgeous, confident, familiar, her ex. The one she told me had left her suddenly. The caption read, "Rumor has it the two are reconnecting after Kestrel's mysterious Neon Harbor wedding stunt." My stomach turned to ice. I didn't want to believe it. But the comments were full of speculation, whispers, assumptions. And Kestrel had said nothing, had told me nothing, had vanished without a word. I waited another day. Then I sent one final message. If I got this wrong, if I was just a dear for you, I need you to say it. Please don't leave me guessing. No reply. For a week, 7 full days of silence. I tried to focus on the article. I forced myself to write, to finish the thing that had started all of this. And maybe I hoped that if I poured everything I had into those pages, I could let go of her. I turned it in late Friday night. 36 pages. Raw, personal, brutally honest. I didn't try to hide the way she made me feel. I didn't pretend it was all just an accident. I wrote about falling in love in a way I hadn't planned. About discovering that sometimes the people we're meant to love are the ones who challenge us most. I didn't use her name. I didn't have to. My editor called me in tears. "It's the best thing you've ever written," she said. "It's already scheduled for print next month. It's going to change everything." I hung up and felt nothing. I went home. I sat in the dark and I cried for the first time in years. Because it wasn't the article that mattered. It wasn't the attention. It wasn't even the marriage. It was her. It was the way she looked at me like I was something rare. Like I was someone worth choosing. And now she was gone. Sunday morning, I woke up to the sound of knocking, soft, hesitant. I pulled myself out of bed, heart pounding. When I opened the door, she was standing there. "Kestrel," rain-damp hair, eyes red, hoodie pulled over her head. "Hi," she said, her voice. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. "I messed up," she whispered. I got scared. Everything was happening so fast. You were getting under my skin in ways I didn't know how to handle. And then my ex showed up at this event and people started talking and I didn't know how to explain anything. So, I disappeared because that's what I do. I run. You didn't even answer," I said. "You let me think." "I know," she said, voice breaking. "I hated myself every day. I didn't reach out. I read your messages 100 times. I wanted to call. I didn't feel like I deserved to." "Then why are you here?" She looked at me, eyes filled with something raw. "Because even if I don't deserve it, I want to try again. I want to make it right. I don't want this to be over. I don't know if I can trust you again," I whispered. "I know," she said, "but if you let me, I'll prove it. Not with words, with time, with showing up, with staying." For a long time, I just stood there, torn between anger and longing. But underneath all of it was one undeniable truth. I still loved her. Maybe I'd never stopped. Maybe I'd never even had a choice. I stepped aside silently, let her in, not just into the apartment, but into the possibility of something new, something fragile, something like real love. Letting her in was easy. Trusting her again, that would take time. After everything that happened, after the silence, after the photos with her ex, I didn't know what I expected when I stepped aside and let Kestrel into my apartment that night. But what I didn't expect was how small she looked. Like all the confidence, all the performance, all the fire that usually wrapped around her like armor had melted away in the rain. She didn't try to explain everything at once. She didn't beg for forgiveness or fill the air with excuses. She just stood there, wet shoes on my rug, hoodie clinging to her arms, eyes red-rimmed and open in a way I'd never seen before. "Do you want tea?" I asked. It was the only thing I knew how to offer. She nodded. I moved to the kitchen without looking at her and tried to breathe. My hands shook as I reached for the mugs. Everything in me wanted to protect myself, to shut the door behind her and walk away from the ache. But then I remembered what she said. Not with words, with time, with showing up, with staying. When I handed her the tea, our fingers brushed. She didn't pull away. Neither did I. We sat on the couch, quiet for a long time. The rain kept tapping the windows, a soft rhythm that filled the silence between us. Finally, she spoke. "That woman in the photo, my ex, she showed up at the event uninvited. The publisher wanted press. She's good at making things look a certain way. It was one picture, Sloane. I didn't even talk to her after it was taken. But I should have told you." I nodded, but said nothing. She continued, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm so used to pushing people away before they can leave me first. I thought that made me strong. But then I met you and I realized strength isn't about disappearing. It's about staying when it's uncomfortable, when it's messy, when it's real." I looked at her, then really looked. She was terrified and trying, and mine somehow even still. "You hurt me," I said quietly. "I know you disappeared. I did. You don't get to do that again." "I won't," she said. "I promise." I believed her. Not all the way. Not yet. But enough to say, okay. From that moment on, things didn't magically fix themselves. We didn't snap back into easy laughter and rooftop dates. There were awkward pauses, missed texts, days when I felt the weight of doubt pressing down on my chest. But there were also moments, soft, steady moments that told me this was worth rebuilding. Like the way she started sending me voice notes again. Little daily updates about her writing, her coffee disasters, the weird things her neighbor's dog did, or the way she'd show up at my apartment with my favorite pastry, and a nervous smile that always melted me a little, or the time she handed me a note that just said, "I know this is slow, but I'm not going anywhere." One night, about 2 weeks after she came back, We sat on my rooftop with mugs of tea wrapped in mismatched blankets, watching the city lights flicker. She looked at me and said, "I read your article." My heart stopped. "You did every word," she said. "I cried twice. Laugh more than that. And I didn't realize how much I meant to you until I saw myself through your eyes." "You scared me," I admitted. "I don't do this. I don't fall. I don't open up." "I know," she whispered. "That's why I'm trying so hard to deserve it." I reached for her hand. She let me take it. No rush, no pressure, just her fingers and mine. "Real?" The annulment papers came in the mail, I said softly. She didn't move. "What do you want to do?" "I haven't opened them." "Do you want to?" I shook my head. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." She exhaled, relief written all over her face. "Me neither." A long pause. "Do you think it's ridiculous?" I asked. "That we got married in Neon Harbor, and now we're here sitting under stars trying to fix something we didn't mean to start." "Not ridiculous," she said. "Miraculous, maybe." "You always did love big words. You make me want to say them," she said, smiling softly. "You make me want to say a lot of things." "Like what?" I asked, afraid to hope. "Like I think I was wrong when I said I didn't believe in soulmates." I looked at her. "You think I'm yours?" "I think," she said, brushing a thumb against my hand, "you might be the only person who's ever made me believe I could be someone's." I didn't cry, but I could have, because no one had ever said anything like that to me. And in that moment, I knew whatever this was, however it had started, however messy and complicated and completely upside down it had been, it was becoming the truest thing I'd ever known. I thought we'd finally found peace. After everything, the chaos in Neon Harbor, the awkward aftermath, the long silence, and then the slow rebuild, I thought we were finally in that space where we could just be. Not perfect, not easy, but real steady ours. And for a while, we were. Kestrel started spending more time at my apartment than at hers. Her toothbrush lived in my bathroom. Her sweater started showing up in my laundry. We developed routines without realizing it. She made the coffee. I picked the playlist. She stayed up late writing while I read beside her, Aries touching under the blanket. We still bickered, still teased, still rolled our eyes at each other in public. But now there was softness underneath it, a layer of affection that had never been there before. And I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this thing that began with glitter and tequila and chaos could actually turn into a life. But peace has a way of shaking when too many eyes turn to look at it. The article was scheduled to publish. My editor sent me the final layout, the digital promo banners, the release calendar. "This one's going big," she said. "Front page of the site, print cover. We've already had interest from podcasts and interviewers. You're about to be everywhere, Sloan." I should have been proud. I should have felt accomplished. But instead, I stared at the mock-up with my heart in my throat. Because no matter how carefully I disguised it, no matter how I changed names and blurred details, anyone who knew us would know. And if strangers found out, if her family saw it, if her agent saw it, I didn't know how Kestrel would react. So, I told her. I sat her down on the couch, laptop open, and showed her everything. She read the entire article without saying a word. And when she was done, she closed the screen slowly and just sat there unmoving. I asked softly. "Say something." "It's beautiful," she said, but her voice was distant. "You don't sound happy." "It's just a lot. I know. You told the world how you feel about me. Without your name," I said. "Without giving anything away that isn't mine to share. But it's still us." She said, "Everyone will see it. I can ask them to hold it. I offered to delay the release or pull it entirely if you want. You do that if it's too much for you." "Yes." She didn't answer. Just stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the city like it might give her clarity. I watched her in silence, the anxiety in my chest rising with every second. Finally, she turned back. I just need time to think that phrase again. Time, space. The things that always seemed to pull her away from me. Okay, I said, take whatever you need. She nodded and left a few minutes later. No kiss, no promise, just a whispered, I'll call you, but she didn't. Not that day, not the next. The article launched anyway. My editor couldn't hold it. It spread like fire. Comments flooded in. Emails, messages from people who saw themselves in the story, who thanked me for writing it, who said it made them believe in love again. And all I could think was, but mine might be ending. Days passed. No word. I tried not to spiral. I focused on the response, on the praise, on the readers who felt seen. But nothing meant anything if she wasn't there to share it with me. On the 5th day, I got a call from her agent. What did you do to Kestrel? She snapped. She's a wreck. Excuse me. She canceled to meetings, turned down a panel, and told a podcast she's not doing interviews this year. I haven't seen her like this in a long time. I started, but the words got stuck. She read something she wasn't ready to read, I said, and I think I scared her. She's terrified, the agent said, of being known, of being seen. And you saw her too well. I hung up, feeling like I'd broken something precious without meaning to. That night, I printed out the article, the final version, and walked to her building. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just stood in front of her door and waited until she opened it. When she saw me, she didn't look angry. She looked tired, fragile in a way I hadn't seen before. I didn't come to fix anything, I said. I just came to give you this. I held out the pages. I wrote it because I had to, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't pretending. I was in it with you, and I don't regret a word. But if it hurt you, I'm sorry. Truly, I never wanted that. She took the papers but didn't read them. Just held them in both hands like they weighed more than they should. I read them already, she whispered. So many times I practically memorized them. Then why did you run? Because when I saw myself through your eyes, it scared me. Because you didn't just write about what we were. You wrote about who I am. And I didn't know how to accept that someone could love me like that fully without edits. You don't have to earn it, Kestrel. You just have to let it be real. She looked at me, and for the first time in days, I saw her walls fall. Do you still want me? She asked, voice trembling. Even after all this? Yes, I said. I want all of it. The chaos, the silence, the mess. You? She stepped forward, closing the space between us slowly, carefully. I'm scared, she whispered. Me, too, I said. But I'm here, and I'm staying, she said. No more running. She reached for my hand, and when our fingers touched, I felt the truth settle in my bones. We weren't perfect. We weren't easy, but we were worth it. It's strange how the hardest part of love isn't falling. It's staying. Not because the feelings fade, or the excitement dulls, or the fire burns out, but because staying means choosing someone every day. Not just in the glittering moments, not just when everything feels cinematic and easy, but in the quiet, in the mundane, in the vulnerable. After Kestrel stood in my doorway and told me she was done running, something shifted between us. Not in some grand dramatic way, but in the kind of quiet permanent way that settles beneath the skin, like trust rebuilding itself. Brick by careful brick. She didn't move back in. Not yet. We didn't make big promises or bold declarations, but she came back. She stayed for breakfast. She stayed through the silences. She stayed when I got overwhelmed by my own emotions and didn't know how to speak them. She stayed when I doubted myself, when I asked her if this would really last, when I admitted that some days I still expected her to disappear. And every time she just said, I'm here. One morning, 2 weeks after everything, I woke up to the smell of toast and the sound of music playing softly from my kitchen. Kestrel was dancing in mismatched socks, holding a mug in one hand, using a spatula like a microphone. She didn't see me watching from the hallway. She just twirled badly, laughing to herself, and I swear something inside me melted completely. She turned, caught me staring, and grinned. "Don't say anything," she warned. "Too late," I said. "I'm mentally writing a paragraph about this for the sequel. You're terrible. You're worse." She brought me coffee, sat beside me, let her thigh press against mine. "So," she said, "I was thinking dangerous." "Very," she agreed. "But hear me out. What if we actually went somewhere together? Just us. No internet, no deadlines, no editor breathing down your neck. Just us. A getaway?" I asked. "A married couple's retreat," she said, wiggling her eyebrows. "Minus the emotional baggage and trust falls." "We have emotional baggage." "Fine. Then we'll just bring it with us and unpack it on a beach." I laughed. "You're serious?" "Deadly." "Where?" "There's a cabin upstate. I found it while doom scrolling last night. Isolated. Peaceful. No Wi-Fi." "You want to trap us in the woods with no signal?" "Yes," she said, reaching for my hand. "Because I think we're good. But I think we could be great. And I want to see who we are when no one's watching." And that was the moment I realized she wasn't scared anymore. Of being seen. Of being chosen. Of choosing me. We booked the cabin for 3 nights. Packed light. Left our laptops at home. The drive was long and filled with off-key singing and too many snacks. And it felt like something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Freedom. The cabin was small but beautiful. A wraparound porch. Firewood stacked neatly on the side. A window that overlooked the lake. We spent the first night wrapped in blankets, talking for hours. She told me about a poem she wrote in college that no one ever read. I told her about the short story I never submitted. We played cards, cooked pasta, argued about the proper way to butter toast. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't dramatic. But it was ours. The second day, we took a walk around the lake. She held my hand the entire time, swinging it like we were kids. "What happens when we go back?" she asked suddenly. "When the world catches up again." I paused. "We keep choosing this every day, even when it's hard. Even when I freak out and forget how to be vulnerable. Even then, even when you overthink and shut down emotionally." "Absolutely," she smiled. "Okay, I can do that." That night, we sat by the fire in silence, watching the flames flicker, her head resting on my shoulder. "Do you ever think about how this started?" she asked. "All the time." "Do you regret it?" "Not for a second. Not even the glitter veil. Especially the glitter veil." She laughed. "You know," she said softly, "I think I'm falling in love with you." My heart stopped. Not from fear, from recognition. Because I already had a long time ago. Maybe even before Neon Harbor. "You think?" I whispered. "I know." She corrected. "I just wanted to say it right." "Say it again." She looked at me, eyes lit by firelight. "I'm in love with you, Sloane." And I didn't hesitate. "I'm in love with you, too, Kestrel." We didn't kiss. Not yet. Not because we didn't want to. But because that moment was already everything. Just the truth between us. Undeniable. Unshaken. Ours. The thing about love, real love, is that it doesn't erase fear. It walks alongside it. We came back from the cabin changed in quiet ways. Not bigger. Not flashier, steadier, surer, calmer. She reached for my hand in public without thinking now. I tucked a spare key under my doormat with her name on it. We knew each other's coffee orders by muscle memory, and when she couldn't sleep, she stopped texting. She just showed up. Life stayed messy, deadlines, family expectations. Two women trying to build something solid on the shaky ground of an accident. But the chaos didn't unnerve us anymore. The article kept spreading. A few platforms ran it. I got invited to a panel. Kess's agent, once panicked about optics, called to say she'd never been busier. We joked about becoming a brand, but beneath the snark we knew it was more than that. People believed us because it was real, unexpected, Imperfect, chaotic, but real. Reality, however, knocked harder when the envelope came again. The annulment papers, the final set. Last chance to sign, to walk away. We postponed twice, then ignored it, then laughed it off. Now there was no more room to dodge. What are you going to do with it? She asked one night, curled against me in bed, hair sleep mussed, voice low and true. I don't know, I said. Part of me thinks we should keep. Not deciding. That's a decision, she said. And I think we're done running from them. I turned to her. What do you want, Kestrel? Her gaze didn't flicker. You. Every version of you, the scared one, the sarcastic one, the writer who overthinks, the girl who used to glare at me across lecture halls, and the woman who looks at me now like she already knows the ending. I whispered. Not yet. Then let's write it together, she said. Not for the article, not for the readers, for us. But even as she said it, I saw the flicker of something in her eyes. A question still lingering. A piece of her still holding back. I knew what it was. I'd felt it, too. We've done the healing. We're done falling. But we hadn't answered the biggest question of all. Not just do we love each other, but do we mean it enough to stay married? Because love was one thing, marriage was another, and we couldn't keep hiding behind the accident anymore. Do you ever wish it hadn't happened like that? Asked suddenly. She sat up, startled. Neon Harbor. Yeah. That night, the impulsive vows, the glitter, and tequila. Do you wish we'd met some other way? She was quiet for a long time, then sometimes. Not because I regret it, but because I hate that I almost didn't take it seriously. That I almost let something all get lost in something we joked about. Same. But then again, she said, maybe we needed it to be ridiculous first. Maybe if it had started the right way, we would have never dared to finish it. I didn't say anything. I just reached for her hand. The next morning, we stood in line at the city clerk's office, not to file the papers, but to ask questions, real ones, about what it would mean to stay legally married, about changing names if we ever wanted to, about rights, taxes, responsibilities, about what our accident had turned into now that it might become a choice. The woman behind the counter smiled at us kindly, as if she'd seen it all before. You'd be surprised, she said, how many people walk in here as strangers and leave as soulmates. It's not about how it starts. It's about what you choose to do with it. On the way out, Kestrel was silent. I could tell something was still bubbling inside her. That night, she called me to her apartment instead of coming over. I expected wine. I expected music. But when I walked in, the lights were dimmed and there were candles on the table. Just a flickering simple and a piece of paper between them. The marriage certificate signed, still intact. She looked up at me, nervous. I've been thinking a lot, she said, about beginnings, about how people always want the right one. But maybe there's no such thing. Maybe there's just the one that leads to the real thing. I didn't speak. I let her finish. I love you, she said, not just in the way that feels good, in the way that makes me want to build something scary and hard and worth it. I don't want to undo this, but I don't want it to be passive anymore either. So, I'm asking you again, but for real this time. She reached across the table, slid the paper closer to me. Do you want to stay married? I looked at her. My wife, somehow still my wife. My answer didn't come with fireworks. It didn't come with drama. It came with a calm certainty I'd never known before. Yes, I said, let's stay married. And the look on her face in that moment told me we were no longer pretending. Not even a little. There was no aisle, no crowd, no wedding dress, no flash bulbs or altar, or officiant. No glitter, or plastic bouquet, or haze of tequila. Just her, Kestrel, standing in the middle of our living room barefoot in the t-shirt she stole from me months ago, holding a folded piece of paper in her hand like it was something sacred. And me, hair still damp from the shower, knees slightly shaking, heart so full it didn't know where to put itself. Are you sure about this? I asked, voice low, almost reverent. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, she said. Even when we stood in that chapel. Especially not then, she said with a small smile. That night, I loved the idea of you. Now, I love all of you. The real version, the complicated, brilliant, maddeningly careful version. And I want to say it out loud. For us, I nodded, unable to find any clever reply. She handed me one of the folded sheets, blank on the outside. Vows, she said. Real ones this time. I hadn't written anything. Not yet. I didn't need to because every word I felt was already sitting in my chest, waiting. We sat cross-legged on the floor, facing each other, knees touching, no rings exchanged, no legal forms, no audience, just our voices, our truth. Kestrel went first. She unfolded her page, took a deep breath, and began. I never believed in forever, she said. Not really. I thought permanence was a lie people told each other to feel safe. I thought love was something loud and fast and fleeting. But then I married you, and it was supposed to be a mistake, a joke, something to undo. But somehow you turned it into a beginning. You made me want to stay even when it was easier to run. You made me believe in something steady, something soft, something terrifyingly real. So my vow is this. I won't disappear. I won't love you halfway. I won't pretend I don't care just to protect myself. I'll show up every day for the good days, the bad ones, and the completely average Tuesday nights because you, Sloane, you are the story I didn't know I was writing, and I want to spend the rest of my life figuring out every chapter. I stared at her, blinking back the tears I didn't know were waiting behind my eyes. Then I unfolded my blank page, cleared my throat, and spoke from somewhere deeper than I'd ever let anyone see. I used to think love was supposed to feel like a storm, like something that knocked you over and left you breathless. And you did that to me, Kestrel. You knocked me off balance the moment I met you. But what I didn't expect was what came after. The calm. The way you made space for all the parts of me I'd kept hidden. The way you challenged me and still made me feel safe. I didn't mean to marry you that night in Neon Harbor, but I meant it every day since. Every time I chose to stay, every time I wrote about you, thought about you, looked at you. So my vow is this. I will keep choosing you, not because we're legally bound, not because it's easy or convenient, but because you are my person. The one I want beside me when things make no sense. The one I want to build a life with, not because we have to, but because we can, because we want to. She reached for my hand. I gave it to her. We sat there in the silence of our apartment. Nothing grand or cinematic, but everything true. And it was enough. A few weeks later, we threw a party. Not a wedding, a celebration. Just a rooftop gathering of friends and family. My parents brought champagne. Her editor brought a stack of her new book. Our friends brought too many cupcakes. Someone strung lights across the edge of the terrace. Someone played music from a phone balanced in a solo cup. Someone passed around Polaroids from Neon Harbor, faded and chaotic and absurd. And we laughed because looking back, it didn't feel like a mistake anymore. It felt like the first plot twist in the greatest story either of us had ever lived. Kestrel danced terribly as usual. I watched her from the edge of the crowd, heart full to the brim. You're staring, she said, coming over. So are you? I'm allowed, I replied. You're my wife. She raised her brows. Still not used to hearing that. You'd better get used to it, I said, slipping my hand into hers. Because I'm not going anywhere. Good, she said. Because neither am I that night we stood under the stars. Real ones this time. Not neon signs wrapped in each other's arms. No one left to impress. Nothing to hide behind. Just two women who hated each other once. Who got drunk, got married, and then made it matter. Two women who stayed, who chose each other, who turned an accident into a promise. Forever didn't feel so far away anymore. If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you.